I've said this before in a similar opening blurb, but everyone likes a super soldier. A human being modified genetically or otherwise to become the ultimate example of what mankind can be, the pinnacle of human science and the human spirit. And of course, there's nothing wrong with this. For all that I am a card-carrying Eldar simp, I understand that as human beings, we tend to root for the human faction. That makes sense. But there are few super soldiers that can compete with the subject of this video. Cato Sicarius and all the Ultramarines don't hold a candle to him. Gears of War or Mass Effect, none of them from Marcus to Commander Shepard are his equal. Even when we get into science fantasy to the realm of Darth Vader or psychers like Araman and what have you, none of them embody the concept of the augmented super soldier like what we talk about today. There are unimaginable levels of bias going to this video, I'll freely admit, because as someone born in 1999 and who grew up on 360 games, that's just how it is. When someone talks of super soldiers, there's one thing that comes to mind before anyone else. The Spartans of Halo, and their heroic actions against the Covenant and beyond, even though they weren't originally intended for such. And when you talk of Spartans, one stands above all the rest. Be it the 2s or 3s, Noble Team or Headhunters, and even though it is ultimately just a rank in the Navy, there is, and only ever will be, one Sierra 117, the Master Chief. John 117, a man who's taken a rank that exists in real life and turned it into something intimately related to Halo. Let's look at the legend himself today and see just why this Spartan turned an Xbox shooter into a cultural cornerstone that simply can never be slain no matter how many horrid sequels or spin-offs it features. Because quite plainly, there can only ever be one Sierra 117. But before I begin, if you happen to want to kick a bad smoking habit of yours, then look no further than Fume, the sponsor of this video. Nicotine is the problem, but habit is another issue. You start reflexively reaching for the vape at a certain point and don't even think about it, it's just nicotine o'clock. You step outside for a moment and you go for a cigarette or vape, or in any moment of peace and you just automatically do that sort of thing. That's what Fume is for. Fume doesn't have any batteries or electronics or vapor. It's not designed to keep giving you nicotine while trying to quit nicotine. It's a neat little fidget toy that I, at least, like to spin around and inhale to keep myself from reaching for a vape instead. And at least personally, I've had success with it. Quitting that habit is hard, but I'm certainly vaping less than I used to because it's replacing the habit of reaching for a vape with reaching for something else that satisfies the same motions. It's got some weight, the flavor is much less intense because it isn't pumping smoke into you, and it's also fun to just twirl in my fingers. So if you want to quit the habit, here's a good place to start. Head to tryfume.com/pancreasnowork or scan the QR code and use promo code pancreasnowork to get your free Fume topper with purchase and start the good habit today. The first step is the hardest, so if you're struggling, try Fume to take that first step today. Now then, time to finish the fight. Forgive me for this bit, but this is a rather personal and, dare I say, maybe even somewhat emotional opening. For those born after it was popular, you may not understand the full phenomenon that was the Master Chief, or at least as I viewed and felt it. The silent protagonist that occasionally gave one-liners or asked plot-relevant questions. This era of gameplay has largely escaped modern culture, for better and worse, so let me explain just a bit and take a trip down memory lane while I'm at it. If you've played Halo, or at least the Bungie trilogy, the Master Chief is more than just the protagonist of a genre-defining first-person shooter. He's more than just the super soldier who stopped the Covenant and the Flood. He's you. He is his own character, with quirks and personality traits, and yet in this era he was the pinnacle of someone for the player to fit right into the role of. When you felt fear in the game, so did the character. When you felt excitement, so did he. When you felt anticipation over what was over the next hill, so did the Master Chief. Like I said, this is something that's fallen out of practice for a variety of reasons, good and bad. And while I won't claim to say that I'm 100% right on basically anything, I feel this in part is why the Master Chief is such a compelling character for countless people my age who played the Halo games. The Master Chief was more than just the main character of Halo. He was how countless people immersed themselves right into it. Anyways, now that I've started the video off by pouring a bit of my heart into it, allow me to give you some more canon lore. It'll still be plenty personal and biased, fear not. John 117 was born on March 7, 2511. In some ways, he was unremarkable. One more child born on a world colonized by humanity. One amongst billions on a world that was one amongst hundreds. Freckled, brown hair, a small gap between his teeth. Nothing much to the average person that would make him seem all that special. He had a few childhood friends, he had his preferred activities and hangout spots, nothing out of the ordinary. But as with all the candidates of the Spartan 2 program, there was something that set him apart. A drive to win, a drive to succeed, and perhaps most importantly, as far as the Office of Naval Intelligence was concerned, the perfect set of genetics to turn into something beyond human. He was already taller than the rest of his schoolmates at 6 years old. Admittedly, this isn't something I would say is quite that impressive, since prior to 2nd grade I was the tallest kid around, and now I stand at a resounding and titanic 5'7". But he was also stronger, had better reflexes, and in a schoolyard version of King of the Hill, he was the uncontested victor of it dozens of times in a row. I wouldn't say he was a bully or anything along those lines, just a kid with a competitive spirit and the drive and intelligence to fulfill it. But these qualities, amongst whatever genetic spycraft Oni did in its spare time, set him apart. And what would set him most on the path to his future self was a simple quality beyond all others: luck. Catherine Halsey herself visited him for the final test to see if he would be conscripted into the Spartan program or not. The test itself was simple. Heads or tails, friendo. The coin, an old American quarter, landed on the eagle side. Tails. John called it correctly, and so his fate was sealed. What would have been perhaps a generically successful kid at most in normal society instead turned into a weapon, a monster, and the savior of mankind. A Flash clone that died of quote-unquote natural causes shortly afterwards replaced him, and whatever his last name once was, he was now John 117, one of the few unlucky enough to be chosen for the Spartan 2 program. As with the rest of the candidates, he was brought to Reach for training and, more to the point, indoctrination. One of their first training exercises was simple: ring the bell. The first team to ring the bell at the end of a rather difficult obstacle course would be the winner. John, though not a bully like I said, was a bit of a self-absorbed brat. No real judgment from me, to be honest. Until you graduate college or so, most people are self-absorbed, and quite frankly, I know enough people even nowadays that haven't managed to think about how what they do affects anyone else beyond how it in turn goes back to them. People can be shitty, but at that age it's just human nature. So John rocketed forward, becoming the first of the candidates to reach and ring the bell in a fairly resounding victory. But this was a team exercise. Until every member of a team rang the bell, functionally none of them had. And John's teammates, Kelly and Samuel, were the last to ring the bell. As the last team, they went without dinner that night. But John wasn't a brat, much as I did call him one. He learned teamwork and the value of helping others far faster than most his age, and with certain people in mind as I write this, faster than plenty of adults learn it too. The next day, the exercise was repeated in a more difficult manner. John came third this time, but his team reached the top together. John became friends with Sam and Kelly, which, if you'll forgive the spoilers, one of them would last the rest of his life, and one of those friendships wouldn't last him nearly long enough. John would continue excelling in his own way. A few years later, which means 8 years old because Spartans are horrific, he would be part of a training operation to reach a dropship for extraction from Reach's mountains. He took charge and ensured every trainee reached the ship, and at the end took upon himself punishment for being the last man on board. The trainer of the Spartans, a man named Mendez, was initially not terribly happy with John. Slow and steady tends to not win the race when you're training super soldiers to combat space terrorists, after all. But with the initiative shown during the affair, he was eventually promoted to a squad leader for his efforts. He would show initiative in that role from there on out, becoming a leading figure for the Spartan candidates. He was never the fastest, that was Kelly. He was never the best shot, that was Linda. He wasn't even the most social or charismatic, I'd say that was Fred. But as wishy-washy as it may sound, he possessed certain qualities and an aura around him that made him a natural leader. Spartan training continued on in this matter, and it was as brutal as could be to toughen the kids up and prepare them for what was to come. Live fire exercises, training against full-on soldiers, the works. The worst, of course, came from the augmentation procedures for the Spartans. Of the 75 Spartan candidates, 30 died outright from them, and a further 12 were crippled to varying degrees, and the 33 remaining had to undergo intensive therapy to basically relearn how to use their bodies. Also, 2 of them killed themselves. As an aside on that, shout out to the washout Ralph. He was one of those who didn't take to the augmentations, but recovered fully, and then proceeded to become a Marine, which, to be frank, is insane. The man was kidnapped by the government and turned into a science experiment and still went, yeah, I'll join the military. I mean, I guess the Covenant were here, but still, man, that's some dedication. But back to John 117. Shortly after his augmentations and during the recovery training aboard the ship the Atlas, John was working out in the gym and everything felt wrong to him. He was lifting weights, but they didn't seem near heavy enough, and everything seemed slow. At one point, he dropped some weights, started doing math on the spot, and while he calculated that, yes, gravity was working normally, they still seemed to be falling in slow motion. And then 4 ODSTs came into the gym and started being assholes. Now, rude or not, ODSTs are, other than Spartans, the unit sees best with the most intense training. They're nothing to scoff at or take lightly. The sergeant of the ODSTs then ordered them adjourned into a boxing ring. The fight lasted 4 seconds, and 2 of the ODSTs were killed. It should be noted at this point that he is 14 years old. John was rather upset. He's basically accidentally Adam Smashered some of his fellow soldiers, but given that he was reassured he had done nothing but follow orders as given, his guilt was somewhat assuaged. There was a bit more training in his and the other 2's future, such as against Marines wearing Mark I Mjolnir armor, which was simple enough that it didn't melt down their nervous systems by wearing it, but soon enough the time came for their first proper mission. Wearing a simple bodysuit, John alongside the other Spartans of Blue Team infiltrated the ship of a rebel leader. Simply and easily, the Spartans took down several guards, captured the leader, and exited the ship by way of blowing a hole in the side and flying a pelican out. Other than being a leader capable of pulling it off without much trouble, John was also shot in the ribs with a bullet that apparently ricocheted around his torso. This didn't slow him down, in spite of the fact it was just in his gut for the rest of the mission. Of course, after a singular mission against insurrectionists like what the Spartans were designed for, it was then time for a coalition of aliens to decide that humanity was religiously icky and had to go yesterday. At least they got their Mjolnir armor in a properly powered form by this point. At the Battle of Chicheti IV, the Spartans were deployed to take down a Covenant vessel with UNSC naval support. John would learn a few things about Covenant tech during this mission that could help the UNSC in many ways, such as how for the briefest of moments, holes appeared in the shielding around their ships in order for their weapons to fire through. Between this and a more literal hole in the Covie ship, a mech cannon had opened up. Him as well as the Spartans Kelly and Sam smuggled several UNSC warheads aboard, armed them, and detonated them to destroy the Covenant ship. Not without loss, however. The Spartan Sam 34 had to remain behind, as the vacuum seal of his armor had been breached and his death was, no matter what, assured. This shook John as it did the rest of the Spartans, since like any teenagers, much less ones who had just been handed the best training and armor possible, they felt invincible. In spite of the later directive stating that no Spartan killed could be declared as anything but MIA, they now knew that they could die just the same as anyone else. The Battle of Alpha Covie II was one of the next major engagements for John, and one that I feel showcases his personality to some degree. During operations against the Covenant, John and Blue Team would realize a select part of the world was being defended by rebel forces rather than UNSC Marines or anything of that sort. Though after finding this out, things were a bit tense to say the least, the Master Chief did broker a peace deal with them. The war against the Covenant was beyond any sort of fighting humanity was doing amongst itself, and given what had happened to Harvest, an uneasy peace was formed. Even after a plan the rebels enacted trapped Blue Team underground for a bit, they remained allies. After all, Spartans more than anyone else, especially by this point given Sam's death, knew that sometimes the mission had to be completed no matter the cost. In spite of the efforts of those involved, however, which by this point also included keeping a Forerunner artifact out of Covenant hands because those damn things are everywhere, the planet fell as basically all human ones did during the war. A Pelican was dispatched to rescue the Spartans, and between Blue Team and the rebels, a path was clear allowing it to land. Blue Team was allowed on, the rebels were not. After takeoff, John argued fervently against this, and raged at abandoning who had by this point been fellow allies against an alien threat. This ultimately amounted to nothing, but I feel it shows John should be given props. He was turned into a weapon by Oni with the express purpose of taking down rebels, and when confronted with some, he turned them into allies against a greater threat. I feel that shows character. A variety of other operations during the Human-Covenant War showcased John's own personality as well. At one point, a UNSC officer used he and his Spartans as bait so that another operation could succeed without excessive casualties. John told the officer that he knew they were used as bait, and was told in response that he was damn right and insubordination in a war for survival wasn't to be tolerated, Spartan or not. In Operation Silent Storm, he played a vital part across the theater of war, repeatedly hamstringing the Covenant's efforts while the bulk of the UNSC military did the best it could to keep everyone alive. He made friends with Avery Johnson during this time, since Johnson had a few comments made to him and other Spartans regarding a potential information leak amongst UNSC command to the Covenant. Actions against rebels even occurred still, since some were hoping that if they allied with the Covenant against the UNSC, enemy my enemy and all that, they'd be spared. Foolish hopes to be sure, but knowledge of the Covenant even existing early on was heavily suppressed, much less the religious motivation of wiping out humanity. Plus it was early in the war, some people were still a little unclear on if genocide meant every human or not. And on the Battle of Zeus, the Covenant-held world of all things, the destruction of a key logistics station earned himself nothing short of the title we all know him by, the Master Chief. I will be calling him that from here on out, since it wasn't technically true up to this point, but now I just feel weird not doing it. I mean, I'm not on a first-name relationship with the guy, I don't know John. I'm not Sergeant Forge, whose way of making friends is to get into a fistfight with a Spartan and then eat lunch with them every day. While there were a few more actions undertaken by the Chief against rebels, he would nonetheless go on to be deployed almost entirely against the Covenant from that point forward, since the situation against them would only ever grow worse and worse. And let it be known, not all battles he was in were victories. In fact, to be quite frank, few of them outside of his involvement were. The Battle of Jericho 7 saw the planet glassed by the Covenant in spite of his own Blue Team holding off great numbers of them and John himself personally killing hundreds, whilst the Spartan Red Team deployed a nuke into a Covenant ship. The UNSC, as it always did, lost the war in space, and the Spartans were just barely pulled out. He requested to be able to watch the planet being glassed, which he did for an hour. Now, I'm not going to say I can relate to the man on that, since I had a pretty normal childhood, all things considered, and have not either been turned into a weapon or had to watch aliens burn my friends and family alive. What I do feel comfortable in saying, though, is that if someone is blankly staring out a window for an hour plus, let alone a window into a view of the apocalypse, they're probably not in a good place mentally. I've had more days staring outside a window thinking nothing after one thing or another than I'd like, and that's what this reads like. In spite of moments like that, though, he would always still show respect for his fellow soldiers around him, and of course this went doubly so for his fellow Spartan 2s who were family. In spite of the shorts also being often, Chief's appearance in them showcases the softer side of the man when he shows up in Halo Legends, too. He closed the eyes of the dead Spartan Daisy and placed a keychain she had since childhood on her body. In a short that was just a more official version of a Monty Ohm fight sequence, he spends about half his time kicking ass and half the rest of the time frustratedly shouting out as his fellow Spartans dial around him. That and being weirdly flirty with Dr. Halsey, which, man, don't like that. Don't like that one bit. That's the lady that turned him into a weapon. By the year 2552, as the war was coming to an end, the Master Chief had received every medal the UNSC could give him except the Prisoner of War medal, which is something basically no one got during the Human Covenant War, as well as having been the soldier with the most missions out of all UNSC personnel. As much as I said the battles he was in were ultimately mostly losses, this should not be taken as an indictment against him. When he was deployed, even at great cost, the mission was more or less always achieved. He was part of the group that blew up the unyielding Hierophant, another massive logistical hub that was going to help hundreds of Covey ships reach Earth. Sure, it was Admiral Whitcomb and his unparalleled mustache that did the final exploding, but the Chief was vital for the efforts as always. And the thing is, even the Covenant knew specifically about him and feared and reviled him. By this point, it's true that the Spartans were known as demons by the Covenant, beings that would appear out of nowhere to cause untold amounts of havoc and destruction against their holy mission. Master Chief was the demon, which is perhaps the best compliment one could give him. In Warhammer, right, there's demons. If you're aware of the setting, that's not news. Imagine if there was a single demon so kick-ass that it was simply known as the demon, however. Not a demon, the demon above all the rest of them. That's what the Master Chief was, because he would, from the Covenant's perspective, waltz into the most heavily fortified areas they had in the middle of a fleet and paint the walls with their blood. I haven't been able to find it since, but I saw a piece of fan art once depicting the Master Chief from the Covenant's standpoint, and yeah, if I was a grunt and he turned the corner, there's not enough pants in the world to contain the shitting myself I'd be doing. And for humanity's side of things, he, alongside his fellow Spartans, gave humanity hope. When their existence was declassified, countless clips of battlefield footage of the Master Chief kicking ass were spread across human space. He was often one of the only things giving people hope by this point, for the Spartans being portrayed as invincible was oftentimes the only thing providing any sort of solace to those evacuated off a glassed world. During the fall of Reach, the Master Chief, alongside most other Spartan 2s, were preparing for a mission deep behind Covenant lines to capture a prophet and attempt to sue the Covenant for peace. He was outfitted with Mark V Mjolnir armor, with all the fancy-schmancy energy shields and overall better systems, and proved himself one hell of a guy by testing it against ODSTs and then deflecting a rocket out of midair with his hands. I mean, yeah, it did nearly kill him, but I'm gonna assume that's infinity more rockets than you could deflect. He also met Cortana, the scan of Dr. Halsey turned into an AI and became bestest friends with her. And then the funny moment happened. Slipspace rupture detected, and now Reach itself was the next planet in the Covenant's sight. Chief's part in this, since Operation Red Flag to capture a prophet was pointless now, especially since Noble Team blew up a supercarrier they wanted to hijack, was defending the energy stations for the various orbital Mac cannons. Eventually, though, the planet fell, for it was only the UNSC versus the Covenant without some mitigating factor. Such was the fate of even Reach. Master Chief did manage to rescue a few survivors, including once again Avery Johnson, and fled the doomed world on the UNSC Pillar of Autumn. In a not actually blind slipspace jump using information gleaned from Foreigner structures under Reach, he would then go on to redefine gaming history for all time to come, and start the events that had saved humanity from the Covenant and a far worse threat that had been 100,000 years in the remaking. He would afterwards return to the burnt-out husk of Reach for a bit to rescue a few survivors, including some other Spartans and Dr. Halsey herself. Now I am going to be largely skipping over the events of the Halo games. To be quite honest, I've not much to say on them because you just go play them. They've held up quite well. To sum them up very quickly, because again, if nothing else, you can also just go watch the cutscenes online, here's the most condensed version of the original Halo trilogy I can think of writing. Master Chief wakes up, discovers Halos are a real thing, discovers zombies are real, and blows both up. Master Chief returns to Earth, but the Covenant are there, so he ends up on Halo Round 2, but the zombies have already ascended to super zombie status. After leaving his AI girlfriend behind, Master Chief returns to Earth one more time before leaving the goddamn galaxy, and with the help of his alien buddy and rescued AI girlfriend, defeats the Covenant and the space zombies with the power of friendship and a really cool Warthog run. There. For the sake of saying I talked about the Halo games, I did it, and for the sake of your own personal growth, if you haven't, go play the goddamn Halo games. At least the original trilogy, because as it turns out, there are damn good reasons people like me are still banging on about them over 2 decades later. There's a memento mori for you, by the way. Halo 3 is almost 20 years old. But there are a few moments in and throughout them that I think showcase the Master Chief, sometimes in ways not often considered, or at least not much beyond being simply stated as fact. 2 of them are in Combat Evolved and the novelization of such, so let's start with the first few. I started thinking about the escape pod thing in a different way after seeing a Twitter post, which usually is the sign of infinite torment and bad opinions, but hey, every now and again something cool slips its way in. The Chief clearly cares about his fellow soldiers. In the scene, he practically throws a soldier that tripped into it into an escape pod. But as it's coming down, some things go wrong, and the escape pod is clearly going to crash land, even more so than an escape pod already is crash landing if it's being used. And the shoulder pat the Chief gives to a Marine here as he asks if they're gonna make it, I think it's easy to say he's reassuring the Marine because, yeah, he is. But the Chief is also a Spartan too. Here's a man whose childhood was ripped away from him, whose interactions have all been with other soldiers, and has spent most of his life fighting alongside fellow abductees into the Super Kill terrorist program. This man is awkward. The Master Chief doesn't know how the hell to interact with people like a well-adjusted person because he isn't one. This pat on the shoulder is him reassuring the Marine in quite literally the only way he can possibly think of, which is to awkwardly pat his arm a bit and then walk to the front of the escape pod. He knows he'll be fine, and he knows the Marines are gonna die, and that's all this guy can think to do now because there isn't a word in his brain he has to give. As an aside, by the way, yes, I also assumed that since he wasn't strapped in, he was rocketing around like a pinball during the landing. Maybe 1 or 2 of those guys would have lived if he buckled your seatbelt, Chief. Another thing about him that the Flood novelization shows is that he spends quite a bit of time just barely not being paralyzed by fear. Spartan conditioning means he keeps a cool head, but in the book Halo the Flood, the novelization of Combat Evolved, he spends his time running through the library the same way most of us do. Utterly terrified. He's fighting insane god zombies from the depths of some crazy ring world named after a religious item. I'd be utterly terrified too. His perspective is a Spartan version of when you've just been jump scared in a horror game and really just have a string of swears and whimpers as you try to hot-foot it out of there. And you can't blame him for that. Again, I'm assuming a decent chunk of you have played the game. What other reaction is there for turning a corner and seeing 2 rocket flood already aiming at you other than going Once again, no judgment, it just makes him feel more human. As incidentally does the moment when he sees the corpse of a UNSC Marine, realizes that random guy made it as far as he had up to that moment without dying in spite of just being a normal guy, and then thinking you must have been one hell of a badass. That random Marine absolutely was. And lastly, he's lucky, which some of you know about, but the way that's shown has always been one of my favorites in fiction. It's not a TTRPG where being lucky lets you re-roll a dice you flubbed or have a higher number in something to represent it or anything like that. In terms of pure abilities, he's no better than any other Spartan. He never was physically the greatest in any way. George, I don't believe, was even the biggest Spartan too, and that dude was the size of a house even compared to the Chief. The Master Chief's luck, at least in the games, comes from everything possible that needs to happen happening in order for his own skills to take over and he can finish the fight himself. What always sticks out to me as the greatest example of this is in the first mission of Halo 3. You can find a downed Pelican that has a sniper near it that naturally you can just go and grab and use yourself. The Pelican was hanging off the edge of a cliff. By all means, it should have plummeted in the water and left nothing for you to grab. But the Chief's lucky. He was lucky the Pelican had a sniper on it. He was lucky it didn't crash into the water, or the Covenant near it didn't throw all the crap it had on board into the water. This luck gave him the perfect weapon to take out the brutes that had captured Sergeant Johnson from a distance with, because as a Spartan, he's still a crack shot, and then move on to finish the survivors off as well as the reinforcements like you do in the game. He's lucky in a way that explains everything that is ultimately a video game contrivance for a fun bit or a cool set piece. He finds snipers in parts that are great for sniping because he's lucky. He finds relatively undamaged vehicles, assuming they aren't being dropped there intentionally for him, because he's lucky. You might call that plot armor, and yeah, the Master Chief has it in spades, sure. He has the plot armor for the plot to give him exactly what he needs so that using his own incredible abilities, he can go save the day. He's not taking shortcuts, he's not abusing some system or other. At best, or perhaps worse, depending on how you look at the guy's fate, he's been more or less unknowingly doing exactly what he did the day Halsey took him ever since, calling the coin right every single time. After he went to bed for a bit at the end of Halo 3, he then beat up Forerunners after waking up with the most out-of-nowhere armor design change in history, which, by God, was that silly. And then Halo 5 happened, and it was with everyone discussing Halo, we can just skip by that. If I skip the OG Halo trilogy in this video, for the most part, because they're so good, accessible, and you should just play them, then with Halo 5's story, I skip it because I hate it. Man says Halo 5 is bad. Hot takes only on this channel, truly. I think that in Halo 4, his reaction to Cortana's death did get my feelings going a bit, though. Or, well, not quite death, I guess, but still, it made me sad. And in Halo Infinite, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I like the pilot and Chief's relationship. Maybe I have been ruined and am nothing more than a dumbass Marvel rambling dialogue fan, but again, I'd probably be no better in that situation, and it's nice to see the Chief being a bit human whenever that can happen. Backtracking a bit though, I think it also really sells how much the Covenant feared him and at least the elites respected him, that only the Arbiter at the end of Halo 3 assumed he was still alive after the game. After all, were it so easy for him to die, the Covenant would have gotten him long ago. At some point after Halo 5, he also did his best to save the peace talks between part of the United Earth government and some elites, though Oni managed to not only keep hidden the knowledge of an attack on the talks beforehand, but refused to let the Chief try and save them. He did his best anyways, but the head of the human delegation was killed by a xenophobic group of human rebels. The UEG and government of the world, Biko, even went as far as to blame him for the affair. The elites themselves were on the whole also disappointed, both in the UEG and the Demon's supposed failings, though given how in Sangheili culture assassinations are how you create a newly appointed official, that's a bit more forgivable. As far as they're concerned, you should have stopped the assassination, Chief, so they're going to be a little bit disappointed in him for not doing that, especially after the hell he gave them throughout the war. I don't agree with the elite sentiment, to be clear, but it's a hell of a lot more forgivable than Oni and the UEG blaming the Master Chief for a terror op. Of course, the entire affair and the opinions of the UEG and Biko radically reversed after someone threatened to go public with the Spartan 2 program and the whole mass kidnapping of children thing, but it really was a colossal shitshow the Chief did not need on his plate. Prior to Halo Infinite, he was also part of a large operation to what was left of Reach in order to deal with both some Banished and Cortana's shenanigans. And then in Halo Infinite, he did a whole lot of nothing. Now that might sound like something someone interested in lore would tell you all about, especially because as far as gameplay goes, I actually quite like Infinite. It legit might have some of the most solid gameplay out of all the Halo games, genuinely. But the story wasn't bad like Halo 5, where I remember it because I'm complaining about how much it sucks. It gets just nothing. Moving on. Now, because Halo Flashpoint exists and the Master Chief is a playable model in the game, we shall now discuss the pros and cons of the Master Chief in Halo Flashpoint. Usually when I'll do this, I'll do lore pros and cons, and tabletop pros and cons. I'm ripping the band-aid off now and gonna say, nah, there's no lore cons for playing the Master Chief as a character. Only pros. This is the Master fucking Chief. There are zero negatives from a lore perspective of the game you're playing for rocking up to the table, unveiling the minis for the game you're playing, and proudly announcing that part of your force is Sierra 117. It's as simple as that. I won't waste anyone's time here by trying to pretend I have some downside for playing the Master Chief from a lore perspective, other than maybe the fact that you are technically supporting child soldiers by doing so. But he's so cool that at least personally, I'm going to overlook the minor detail. He's cool as hell, run the Chief. As for tabletop positives, here's a sheet of his rules. As for speed, he's not too much faster than most characters. 2 normal moves for a short action, or a full long action that lets him move 3 squares. Other Spartans have those stats. The rest of his stats are cracked, but we'll get to his full power soon enough. He hits in melee and range on a 3-up of a D8, saves against damage on a 3-up as well, has 2 armor, which means chances are without an armor-piercing weapon you aren't hurting him, and has 5 entire health. In Flashpoint, these stats are cracked. With 3 energy shield points, you also have to crack through those. If I remember correctly, Stoic means he can never be pinned by weapons that have that ability, and I think it might also mean he always counts as crouched, but between the rulebook and online statements, I'm not totally sure on that one. And Tactician 3 means you get 3 command dice to roll for a total of 5, and can re-roll 3 of them. This is one of the most important things he has, and I'll explain why soon. As for his weapons, he only starts armed with an energy sword, but when I say only, I mean that he is coming and swinging with a goddamn energy sword off rip. With proper positioning and usage of terrain, he's gonna rip people apart like paper mache, which tracks because everyone in front of him is noticeably not the Master Chief, and therefore inferior. But by far the most important thing is the Army of One rule. You gotta pay a bit more for it in the current rule set of Flashpoint, but the way it works is so absurdly, unbelievably good that I get it. See, normally in Halo Flashpoint, you can only give a model so many command dice and extra activations out of it. With Army of One, as long as you give the extra special order dice to the Master Chief, his turn basically doesn't end. You can pump the rest of your 4 command dice directly into him getting more turns. Shoot 3 times, melee twice, give him 4 extra whole turns if you roll the right command dice. That's just how it works. He's unstoppable on his turn because his turn simply doesn't end. You don't have to use all the extra command dice on him, mind you, it's just that given his stat line, you probably should be doing that. As for gameplay downsides, there are simply two of them. One is that he doesn't start with a gun. Given army of one, there's a very good reason for that, which is that if he started with a gun, the game would be over unless the opponent in turn was running a Master Chief of their own. But it does mean that for anything but being a melee monster, you gotta go grab yourself a weapon drop. Two is that in either way of playing the game, he's the most expensive model there is. Running in the current point-based way of playing the game, the Chief runs you a little over 90 points. This is a game where 200 is the standard. Using the original way of playing the game, you take the Master Chief in place of 2 entire Spartans. Played well and he is worth it, but if you play him poorly, or unlike him are absurdly unlucky, you're probably going to feel like you're letting the guy down. There's also a continuation of one of the downsides I had for Halo Flashpoint in general, though this one I imagine is less likely to occur when Chief is on the table, given the circumstances. There will, however, likely eventually be people you play against who don't want nothing but blow me away playing on loop for the entirety of your game. I know, that thought frightens me too. But there are people out there like that, if you can even call them people, so you should be ready for it. It's fine though, you'll just have to make them fall in line, one at a time. I held myself back from making 90% of this script breaking Benjamin lyrics. I earned that one. And to end on something mostly unrelated, self-glaze. At the last Adepticon, as of time of me posting this, I entered the Master Chief Challenge event. It was 4 guys all using the Master Chief, and after an hour and a half of playing, whoever the most kills won. And you know who won? I won the one that I played at. I am the Master Chief. He's literally me. I'm literally him. And you better believe I walked away from that event with a smile on my face and a tent in my pants. And that was John 117, the Master Chief. Hope you'll have fun with the Halo CE make, and more to the point, I hope the CE make is good. I hope it's good for a variety of reasons, mostly because I just want Halo to be good again, but also for insufferable and selfish reasons. If you know, you know. And in either case, thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the Master Chief to my UNSC, the best of them all, carrying me to salvation. May you lead me to heaven when I die. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching, and take care out there. John Halo beats all the Primarchs in a fight, I don't care. He's the Master Chief. He'll luck his way into fighting just when he needs to do it. No sweat, low diff, kiss my ass, Horus Heresy fans. Halo, I don't even care. Sanguinius is dying worse than against Horus. Angron is getting the nails ripped out of his head with a gravity hammer blast. All the others are getting butchered. John Halo is unstoppable, baby. Let's go. Another 20 trillion credits to the Office of Naval Intelligence.